Welcome back to another episode of B2B 0 to 10, a podcast focused on helping business owners on their 0 to 10 growth journey. This podcast is the intersection of stories, strategies, tactics, trends, and a little inspiration to help you grow your business and achieve your goals. I'm your guide, Brett Trainer. Today, I welcome Shelley Gupta to the podcast. Shelley is the co-founder of BāKIT Box, a new and fast-growing company that is part experience, part convenience, that is modernizing the approach to baking. We break down the origin of BāKIT and how Shelley went from singer-songwriter to management consultant to ultimately the founder or co-founder of BāKIT Box. We break down how they took this from an idea to an execution and how the ongoing story is going to be fascinating to watch. There's a lot of interesting learnings, and you can hear the tactics and the approach they took in their early days and what they're looking forward to here in the future. BāKIT Box is also another one of the startups that we're going to keep checks on as they go on their 0 to 10 journey. And as a favor, if you listen to this podcast, please subscribe on iTunes or hit the follow button on Spotify. Now, let's get this interview started. Hi, Shelley. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Hi, Brett.
It's great to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to this interview. But before we kind of get into your journey, why don't you share with the audience a little bit about what you're working on today and who you're selling to, and then we'll take a few steps back.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the co-founder of BāKIT Box. BāKIT Box is a specialty baking kit company and service. So what we provide is detailed recipes and very user-friendly steps, and all the pre-measured ingredients that come in your box and ship directly to your door so you can bake at home. And it's truly a service to make baking at home easier and to remove those barriers that, kind of take the fun out of baking at home. So it's a no mess, no waste way to bake at home with your family and your friends.
Yeah, the best way of doing it. You don't have to make that last second run to the grocery store because you don't have enough flour, you don't have vanilla extract or something like that.
Right. Absolutely. Everything's in your box. You may need to add an egg or a little dash of salt, but otherwise you have everything included. And we really focus on diverse and cultural recipes as well. So, you'll get to try something new when you order from us versus more of the traditional baking items.
Awesome. And how long has BāKIT Box been around?
We went live into market in February 2021. So we're still very
relatively new, but picking up a lot of traction. So absolutely. Fantastic. So let's take a couple of steps back. And what I always love to hear from founders and business owners is, why this business? Why now? What were you doing before this when you came up with the idea for BāKIT?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I have an entrepreneurial spirit, truly. So I think it was always inevitable that I would start something. And my co-founder and I both have this feeling. And we've spent years as very, very good friends talking about ideas that we would maybe implement on, while doing our other day jobs. So prior to BāKIT Box, I spent many years in real estate development and finance. So very, very different business, very project related. And I got a chance to use a lot of creativity in that, working with architects, working with designers, interior designers, salespeople. And that led me to want to actually study entrepreneurship and strategy. So I moved to Chicago to do my MBA at University of Chicago Booth. And I actually met my co-founder there. So spent 2 years in that program, actually focused on entrepreneurship, but wasn't quite ready to take the leap yet. So I joined Accenture Strategy for 4 years, focusing on growth in the tech space. So that was actually a really, really interesting part of my journey because I learned a ton about a lot of different industries. And it kind of continued to, show me what I wanted to do ultimately in the end. And it was just a matter of finding the right idea for me. Yeah. So during the pandemic, both Carl and I, my co-founder, we were experimenting a lot in the kitchen. And, along with most other people, we were cooking a lot, baking a lot, and, just spending that time being creative and exploring our own kitchens. And that's when we started to realize that, the easy baking solutions are pretty non-existent. And, when it comes to thinking about, okay, I want to bake something at home and what's an easy way to do that, we still think about Betty Crocker and
Yep.
companies that are 100 years old. So we started thinking about, what are truly the barriers and how can we solve for them?
Interesting. So even before you went into management consulting, was your long-term goal at that point, knowing you were going to start a business, even going into management consulting, you just thought maybe a little bit more experience, save a little money, or just that the timing wasn't right?
Yeah, absolutely. I always knew that it was my end goal or long-term goal. But I just didn't have a strong idea yet. And
Okay.
it really, really does start with a strong idea that you feel really passionate about. I've mulled over other ideas in the past, but nothing that really, really clicked for me. So yeah, for me, it was, let's get more experience. Maybe that will lead me down a path of something that I didn't know about yet. But funny enough, I've kind of dabbled in entrepreneurship in other ways in my past as well.
Such as?
Yeah, interesting story. When I back in Canada, so I'm from Toronto, I pursued music for a long time. So I actually started my own kind of like a record label of my own, where I was creating a brand around myself. So I'm a singer-songwriter. Haven't done it in a long time, but so that was my first experience actually as a solo kind of entrepreneur, working with a lot of different partners and building out a brand. And really understanding what it's like to feel connected to a brand, given at the time it was me.
Right.
So I just for many, many years knew that this was something that I wanted to do. And I like building things. I like creating things. So I knew it was inevitable. It was just a matter of time and the right idea.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I would not have pursued music wouldn't have been for me, right? So there's people in my family can sing. I'm not one of them, but
yeah.
I'm always envious of those folks that are that creative, especially the songwriters, right? Being able to put it together. Were you younger when you did that? Was that like a passion project or?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I started singing at, 12, 13 years old, but I started writing and recording through, my university college years. So I was like a late teen into my early 20s.
Which I think is going to help you, right? Because as doing this show now for over 2 years and interviewing, founders, business owners, thought leaders in different areas, right? The one thing that's become crystal clear is you can't separate the owners from the brand, right? Or at least the ones that are growing, you're connected at the hip. And I think the old days of just having the brand stand alone by itself as a faceless, nameless entity, I don't think it's going to work, because I think consumers, right, either business or a consumer, want to know the story behind that brand and who the people are. So I don't know if it was just lucky or good, or you had that intuition early on, but I think that's going to pay off for you guys as you grow.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we both, my co-founder and I, feel really strongly about our brand, and we feel very connected to it, and we're very actually cognizant of ensuring that we are continuing to represent the brand. So I completely hear you. I think it definitely helps.
Yeah. And again, sometimes I stop and think, is it just because who I have on the show, right? They're growing and I'm just pulling founders that are active on, the podcast circuit or in their blogs and video. Now I think it's becoming more universal that you can't separate the two. So you get a little bit of a head start there, which is fantastic. But I do want to go back. All right, so you're at Accenture and you're now baking and enjoying it. Where did you put the two together that said, yeah, I really think we can make this a business? Can you kind of just walk us through a little bit of that thought process, or what that journey looked like from when you're still working full time to, all right, we have an idea and now I'm going all in? Those stories always fascinate me.
Absolutely. So it kind of starts off with when we identified those barriers. So I'll walk through that quickly first. It started off with actually a project that my co-founder was doing, and I was kind of helping her along the way. She was making a cake for her husband, and she shared the idea with me, and we were looking up recipes together. And when you look up a recipe for something even simple like a chocolate cake, you get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of opinions online of what that should look like, what that should taste like. The ratios are different, and you have to read the stories of the bloggers, and it just is very, very time consuming. And that kind of triggered a thought in us, like, there must be an easier way for people that are just trying to do one thing at home for a celebration. And then, you go and you buy the ingredients, and it's impossible to buy just what you need. You're naturally going to spend a lot more money buying larger quantities of items that you need a teaspoon of in your recipe. And then the last thing, as I mentioned, we just noticed that in traditional baking, there's so little access to diverse items. You have to kind of really go searching down a cuisine path to find something that might be a little different or a little bit more unique. So when we started to identify those things and, had this idea and realized, it definitely is a market for this. We were spending our evenings and our weekends, like every day, every week, on the phone together, doing a bunch of research. We looked up every and all other companies that may be a competitor to us. We started, doing analyses and going through all this data to understand, do we have a market? And we actually looked up the Hatchery, which is an incubator in Chicago focused on food startups. And we noticed that they had a couple of classes, remote, virtual classes. So we both decided to take, a class around food businesses and learn a little bit more about their incubator. And very, very quickly, we put our application in, I think within a couple of days of that class.
Okay.
So we got accepted into the Hatchery, and that kind of was the starting point for us to start realizing that we do have a very, very valid idea that can definitely grow and scale.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you looked at competition, was it the prep food delivery companies, or where did you see this fitting in?
Very interesting question. It's kind of in a few different areas, because our service is, although it's baked goods, it's also an alternative to activities that you may do with your family or your friends, or it could be an alternative to just buying final product. Or as I mentioned, or you and I were talking about earlier, it's also an alternative to corporations doing a virtual event online for all of their employees. So we kind of fall in a few different categories. In terms of our competitors, though, there are a couple of different baking kits out there in the marketplace. Typically, they're around a certain type of item. So you might have like a cookie mix or cookie crate, or something that's related to cupcakes that you make at home. But from our research and analysis, no one was doing what we're trying to do. No one was kind of taking the meal kit model and replicating that into baking, and then also giving more access, in the sense that, you can subscribe to our service, or you can just buy it one time. You'll find it in retail stores in the next couple of months. And you can also, do a big group sale for a corporate activity. So kind of taking the same idea as a meal kit and then spinning it. And that's something that is not available in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, I love the idea. I think anything you can create that's got an experience built into it, right? With the virtual world we live in. I mean, I love the idea of the B2B aspect, as teams are now going to be remote. I think they're going to stay remote, or the vast majority probably will. So how do you bring groups together to do something fun? And I think even, I mentioned my youngest daughter is a big baker and she loves to do this. But you're right, finding that recipe, she does tend to stick with the ones that she knows, because, I'm more of an air fryer type of person. But just looking for recipes for, chicken wings, there's like 6,000 online. You got to parse through everything. And if there was a service or somebody that was curating that for me, say, hey, here's some of the best that we think. And not only that, here's the ingredients that you need. I think it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, the experience is huge. It's been a little while since the experience has been becoming more and more of a go-to for gift giving, for, anything, as you mentioned, even with your team building. So it's also just a fantastic gift, with the holidays coming up. You want to give something special to friends and family, especially those that like to create, like to do something with their hands. It's, it's kind of twofold. You get the experience, and then you also get this delicious baked good.
Yeah. Win-win.
It's win-win.
And then so thinking about, all right, so right, we found something, opportunity. What was some of the first things that you did? Was it build a website? Did you try to kind of walk us through? Because I think part of that's overwhelming for people, and think, all right, I've got an idea, and how do I start now? Right? There's so many things to do. What were some of the first steps that you guys took?
Yeah, well, we started off just really being sponges. We talked to everybody that we could who's in food, who's in retail, who's in CPG, and just truly tried to understand the industry and the market. We also started to do a lot of recipe developing. So we'd pull recipes and then start to calculate whether or not, what would our price point be on this, comparing to buying the ingredients in the retail store or buying the ingredients wholesale, and really understanding that, is this going to be valuable for people? So that was one of the first things we did. We had a huge spreadsheet of calculating like flour and sugar and chocolate and how much does it cost in the stores and how much could we sell it for,
Right.
with the suppliers and vendors that we were, doing all those networking calls with. And I'd say, so that was a big part of it, like the product development, really understanding how we would go to market. And then, yes, website development was huge. We did a lot of research on how to create a very, aesthetically pleasing, beautiful website, but for not very much money, especially to start off. So that was a challenge. And then because it's the food industry, I'd say the third challenge that we had early on was just ensuring we could get all the licenses in time. We were still in the midst of the pandemic. Everyone was working from home and there were a ton of delays. So that was something we worked through very early on as well.
Got it. Interesting. And then how did you get some of your first customers? I mean, the website's beautiful, by the way. I know I've told you that, but yeah, you guys did a great job. So what was it, just through SEO or, friends and family? How did you start to get some of that momentum growing?
The first few customers were definitely family and friends. We used our Instagram channel and email marketing just to blast everyone in our own networks, and then hope that there's a referral system there. So our first few sales in that month that we launched in February was mostly people we knew or extended friends, and it grew from there. And I'd say the first person that bought that we did not know, it was a very exciting moment for us.
Oh, absolutely.
We both we got on the phone together and I'm like, do you know this person? Do you know this person? And then we were like, oh my God, our first stranger. So,
well, that's awesome.
It takes time, but it was really exciting.
And then it just starts spreading. So from a strategy standpoint, is it going to be more, you're not truly a marketplace because you're still going to consumer, but you are starting to look at the B2B space, which I think makes a lot of sense. So how do you prioritize that? Was it just, hey, where do we get some momentum, or is it trial and error? We're going to try this. If it doesn't work, we're going to try something else. What was the approach?
Yeah, it definitely is a lot of trial and error for us. Again, we are trying to continue to be sponges and trying to learn from everything that we're doing. So we started off as direct to consumer and just a one-time purchase. We actually didn't go live with the subscriptions until last month, September. And that was kind of very, purposeful in the sense that we wanted to understand, what are people liking about our boxes? Are people going to come back and buy again? Before we decided to launch the subscription. So to your point, it's a combination of the strategy, but also trying things. So we gathered a ton of feedback. We've done interviews with our customers throughout the last, 6 months, understanding what can we change? Where's the value prop for them? What are we a substitute for? And would you subscribe? And all that data went into us launching subscriptions in September, which has been really, really great, where customers can buy they can buy a couple of kits from us every month or every other month, and they'll get it delivered to their door, but they can go in and choose their recipes. So that's kind of a nice feature. We have 5 to 6 recipes available every month, if not more than that. So you get that selection as well. And then when it comes to the B2B side, as you mentioned, again, it's an experiment. We think that there's going to be a great success in retail. But we don't know yet. So we're going to try it out. We're going to start with specialty stores in the Chicagoland area and see if it, builds momentum. And if we see traction, then that's definitely something that we'll continue to shift the balance towards.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And just curious, going back to the early days when you had who you thought your ideal customer was going to be, I'm sure you had a vision. Was it accurate? Right? Did you find that who you thought was going to buy it is actually buying it, or did you get any surprises during that process?
Yeah, a little bit of both, actually. We started off kind of hypothesizing that it would be young professionals, kind of just like ourselves, who, just look for the convenience in things. and, likely have disposable income and just looking for ways to make this activity easier.
Right.
And that definitely is the case, but we didn't realize how much of our target audience would be parents.
Oh, yeah.
They may already have all these things at home. They probably have flour and sugar and keep all the ingredients, but the service and the convenience and the pre-measured ingredients make it so much more, just convenient to bake with their kids at home. And that was something that surprised us a little bit, because we were kind of focused on maybe you don't have flour at home, but it's the fact that there's no mess, there's no measuring, that's all done for you. We're having a ton of parents be like, this is just making my life so much easier. They can kind of hand it off to their kids to an extent until, you're on the stovetop or the oven. And it's a really, really great bonding experience.
Yeah, no, I think it's I absolutely see that even with grandparents and grandkids, right? They're in two different locations. You can bake together, right? The two kids go out at the same time. You can make that time. Super
Absolutely.
Interesting. So it's still early, but any major pivots from when you started, or is it still kind of trending where you thought it was going to go, the business in general?
I think it's pretty much trending in the direction we thought. We've definitely no major pivots. We've made some small pivots since the beginning, just changing our messaging based on what customers are looking for, improving packaging, improving, the way we communicate some things on our recipe or in our box, but just constantly improving and gathering that customer feedback along the way.
Got it. And I'm just curious too, back in the days when you were starting the company, did you have a goal? Was this to be a $100 million company, take it public? Did you guys actually talk about what you wanted the end result of the business to be? Or was it, hey, we think we've got something here, we'll figure that out as we go?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see the promise in that growing to becoming a national, if not even international. I'd love to expand to Canada as well. A huge brand. And given that, no one has really created something like this in the baking industry, and, making it really convenient and simple, I think there's huge potential. We definitely did talk about that, getting into, we're starting off small and seeing where the traction goes. We're also starting off regional. We're just in the Midwest right now, but we definitely see the potential in becoming more of a household name. When you think about, I want to bake something, what's an easier way to do that? We want BāKIT Box to be the first thing you think of. And so to your point, absolutely, we think this can grow, be in every grocery store, but also be in everyone's household, and be top of mind when you're thinking about gift giving and baking.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And then maybe a little too early, but I always like to ask too, is from the end goal with the business, is this to stay in the baking, or are you thinking of yourself as an experienced company that could transition beyond baking into different areas? Like I said, it may be a little bit early, but I'm just curious how you're thinking the broader vision for the brand.
Yeah, great question. We've kind of talked about expanding into tools and bakeware, and that being a really, really great complementary way to help make again, continuing to provide that solution for baking. So right now we focus our recipes on the most standard items you may have in the household. So like a baking sheet, maybe a cupcake tray, but we try to stay away from tools. But at some point we want to expand into that, give you the ability to, add on whatever tool that you may need for that recipe. We haven't quite thought about beyond that yet, but I think there is so much potential. Baking is, it's not just sweets. We already do savories. We already do traditional and cultural. Okay. And some of our items are actually, you don't even have to use your oven. So there's a couple of things on there. We've done some donuts. We've done some stovetop items. So I think to your point, there is so much potential to expand outside of just baked goods.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. Like I said, I always love to hear not even different version. You found a definitely unique path, right? That nobody's doing. And I do think baking is a lost art for a lot of houses. Most people don't even know, baking, absolutely. Right?
And baking is also it's so related. It revolves so much around celebrations, family gatherings, and holidays, and it's always going to be something you do in your household around, maybe your December holidays or whatever holiday you may celebrate, there's always some sort of element of baked goods. And it's so interesting that there just hasn't been something that makes it a little easier yet.
Yeah, no, true. That's why you're on here talking about what you saw and uncovered. So thinking back, and now we've asked all the good stuff, but anything you would have done differently, or was just the right time, right place for this business, or even within the business, are there things that you would have done differently looking back in hindsight?
I don't think so, honestly. I think we, with everything that we had, along our path, we did the best that we could. The only thing that would have been great is if we thought of this earlier with the pandemic. It would have been wonderful to be in the market when everybody was making those banana breads. But of course, this idea came from that whole concept for us. So, other than always, every founder says I should have gone earlier to market. But no, it's been great. We've had wonderful partners along the way that have been super helpful. The Chicago startup industry has been so great and so supportive. And, I don't believe there's anything that I would have done differently. I think we're still on such a growth path. So there's a lot to do still.
Awesome. And I don't know if you guys bootstrapped this so far, or raised some friends and family, or where have you guys raised any money yet?
Yes. So we were definitely bootstrapping at the beginning. Carl and I were self-funding, putting in our own savings. And then we did decide to start a family and friends and an angel round. So this past summer in around June, we opened up the round and we were raising $500,000 to give us a little bit of runway, mostly friends and family and individual investors that were interested. So we're actually almost done the round. We're at 400,000 of the 500. So we're just closing out that last little bit. But it's been really great because, it gave us a little bit of runway to hire a few different key roles. Also, invest in a few other things that were just so critical that were not possible before that.
Got it. Yeah. I was curious to see where the first hires are going. And you mentioned offline sales. You're looking for somebody in the retail space to help with that. But what about internal? Are you, recipe folks, or where would the dollars go, out of curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have hired a couple of recipe developers that we work with very closely on creating, our cultural and diverse and very holiday specific recipes. We also have operational staff that we've been hiring for production in our kitchen space, which, as you can imagine, is a whole internal, thing that we have to focus on. And then I mentioned we are looking for a salesperson as well. So we're actually looking to hire a director of sales who would be focused on just selling to retail, selling to corporate. So that's an area that we're looking at, very focused on the Chicagoland area and, the neighborhood grocery stores, specialty stores. Yeah. In addition to that, we've had some really great interns join the team. And some marketing folks as well. And we work with a few consultants as well in the Chicagoland area, within marketing, within PR, within social media. So that's another area where some of the funding is going towards.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of outsourcing it until you're ready for that full-time resource. The challenge can be, though, is you probably got a strong network, but finding those outsourced resources, right? Because if you make a mistake with the wrong folks, right, it's going to cost you money and set you back. So
right. But it's been wonderful to work with. To your point, we don't have the ability yet to hire all of these different roles internally. So we've been working with really, really great partners who are very experienced in the industry, especially in Chicago. So once you find the right partner, it works really well. But of course, it can be stressful.
Yeah, 100% right. So I think we touched on a little bit, but what's next for you guys the next 3-6 months? What's the area of focus?
Yeah, so definitely the retail channel. So we're exploring that now, and we're going to be launching in our first store. I believe it's late November, and growing from there. So we're very much constantly experimenting and making sure that every decision we make, there's some value there. So retail is the channel that we're focused on. We're also focused on the subscription. So it's newly launched subscription model, and ensuring that there's absolute value there for our customers. And then lastly, or not quite lastly, but we're building out our website. We're doing a revamp where there'll be a lot more access to information additional, recipes on there, tutorials on there, a lot more access for our customers to learn tips and tricks about baking, about the recipes that they're buying from us. So we're working through that as well.
No, that's awesome. I think it makes sense too. Again, curate and be that resource to help you filter through, hey, these are good recipes we've tested and we've made it right. And we talked a little bit about just trying to find and sift through information on the web of what's good and what's not good. It's not easy. So I love that idea as well, being that one-stop shop for baking needs. So
yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, before I get to my one last question that I ask everybody, I'm kind of curious, would love to, again, check back in with you. We're doing this with a few other companies, right? In 3-6 months to bring you back on to just give us an update on progress, as long as you promise to share the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that's going, just full disclosure.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So one question I've asked everybody for now 128 episodes is, what is one thing that you would highly recommend? And it could be professional or personal, something that's top of mind for you right now.
Yeah, I'd say on the personal side, I think it's really, really important to disconnect. And, as a founder, and even in my other career paths, it's very hard to disconnect and very hard to turn off your email and just have some time to yourself. So for me, that's either picking up a really, really good book. I like to do audiobooks as well, or it's, getting a chance to work out. I've been really, really a fan of the Peloton app, for me, it's being creative. So, whether it's drawing or painting or attempting to learn the piano, that's something on my list. Just anything that kind of gets my brain going a little more creatively and less on the work side I highly recommend that.
Yeah, it took me a long time to realize that. But yeah, it makes such a difference. Even the research will tell you just disconnecting is going to make you more productive at the time you spend at work. So I think that's
Absolutely.
great advice. Shelley, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. And if folks want to find you outside of the website, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach us at our email. It's info@bakitbox.com. And that's BAKIT box.com, or the website, as you mentioned, bakitbox.com.
Awesome. Well, Shelley, thank you again for spending the time. We're looking forward to checking in with you here in the not too distant future, and best of luck or continued success.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Brett.
Anytime. Thanks, Shelley. Take care.